And joining us, of course, is the PSA First Vice President and Presidential Candidate Felisha Thomas. Good evening to you, comrade.
Good evening, Comrade Mikee, and to your viewership. Good evening, and to the PSA membership that is listening in tonight. Good night to everyone. Good evening.
Right. Well, a message came in one time because I hear it was on. There is no water in Pittsburgh for more than a week. Jackson Street and Esty Street. They say let Miss Thomas know that because we need water.
Comrade, no problem. I hear, and I hope the person could send some contact information so that we could get on to them. I know that is a WhatsApp issue, but we would see how best we can assist with the issue.
As soon as they hit me up again, I will send it to you. So already they know that you're here. Monday, March 10th. Tell us. I mean, and let me tell you something. I have seen you, of course, throughout the years working comrade hard. And if there's anyone who can lead this union, if there's anyone who is committed and dedicated to ensure that the members get what they want, and by extension, the rest of the country, I believe it's you. You have many people are weighing in when it comes to unions and saying that the unions have lost their way, they have compromised the integrity and the value of the union. But I believe at the head, you definitely will make that difference and ensure that the value is returned. So, comrade, the floor is yours. What can the members expect, and how is your team ready and set up?
Thank you, Mikey, and thank you for the confidence. You have expressed what a lot of the membership have expressed with me and having engaged and interacted with me. And I just want to touch a bit on the time that I've spent at the PSA, because upon entry into the executive of the PSA, I started off as the Deputy General Secretary. That was in 2018. So I served as the Deputy General Secretary and the executive of the PSA. Then I moved on as the General Secretary for a short period of time, and then on to First Vice President of the PSA. So I have been throughout different levels of the organization, and I'm well experienced and well prepared to now take on the leadership of the PSA. And of course, my team is made up of a group of dynamic persons who have also served either within the executive of the PSA, and also some persons who would have served as representatives on their staff side, serving the membership of the PSA as well. So we have a well-rounded team going into this election, and I dare to say the only team that has the experience and the leadership to take the PSA forward. And let me just touch a little bit, and I wouldn't dwell too much on this, but we have seen within the PSA persons offering themselves for the leadership of the PSA, vying for the presidency of the PSA. But those persons are not equipped. They are not trade unionists to begin with. We would have seen those persons, while this executive would have been fighting for better terms and conditions on behalf of workers, those persons would have opted to advance the position of the government and advance for less on behalf of workers. That is not the characteristic of a trade unionist in any form or fashion, and they are disqualified from even being considered as trade unionists, much less to qualify to be president of the PSA.
Yeah, one of the folks who are also vying says that they want to make some adjustments to the bylaws which will prevent the practice of executive members using the PSA as a springboard for their political careers.
Well, that stems from the ignorance of the very said persons who want to hold office. The PSA is an organization that represents workers, government workers at that. And to treat with government workers' issues, we have to treat with the government. It requires us to engage politicians, and when politicians affect our membership, of course, the union has to engage in politics. workers can put a government in office, workers can remove a government from office. And I want to touch a bit on what we have been dealing with, that the things that have been impacting workers, state workers, government workers. We have the imposition of the 4% that workers have been waiting for well over 10 years to commence negotiation, and upon the commencement of negotiations, they are faced with a disrespectful 4% offer. That this executive has been fighting, and we have rejected outright that 4%, and we have said we will not accept 4%. More so without the consolidation of COLA. And I want to touch a little bit on the COLA, the cost of living allowance.
Go ahead.
Because in this negotiations, they have attempted to make fools of workers, that workers are not aware that the consolidation of COLA alone amounts to $51,300 of back pay. And they are asking the union to sign away what is owed to the workers for 4%, when in many cases the 4% increase amounts to just about maybe $14,000 in back pay. COLA is something that was fought for, that workers enjoy today as part of their terms and conditions, and we as trade unionists ought not to, at any point in time when representing workers, roll back or allow the rollback of workers' terms and conditions of employment. That is not what trade unionists ought to do, and that is not what Team Sacrosanct will do. We will fight to ensure that we preserve the cost of living allowance on behalf of our membership, and we will ensure that just as the Prime Minister took care of himself and gave himself a 47% increase in salary, and took his $2 million in back pay, we too will demand that our membership are amply compensated for the work that they have been doing on behalf of this country.
And Comrade, that always seems to be a problem, since with this administration has shown that they are not worker friendly, they are not union friendly. You know, and again, I always talk to you about this. When did it become so popular for this government to believe that the union is a liability, when in fact it is an asset to the workforce? It is an asset to secure the rights and the policies that go along with securing, with job security, safe work environment, all of that. But it seems that when it comes to unions and state enterprises, this administration, again, not being union friendly, looks at the union as that of a liability that they need to get rid of.
The union becomes a liability when they want to enslave workers. They want to take advantage of workers, and I can touch on some of the things that they have been doing. You have workers, for example, traveling officers who own and operate a vehicle. In the performance of their duties, they are required to, they hold a position that requires them to do so. And this state doesn't want to compensate them. In many instances, you have traveling officers either not being paid their traveling, but they're using their vehicles, or they're being paid late, or let's even look at the compensation for the use of those vehicles. It's little or next to nothing in many instances. So we have a government that wants to have workers perform their duties, they get their crop and nothing for the workers. How are they supposed to take care of themselves and their families? And again, as Team Sacrosanct, these are the things we have looked at, we have analyzed, and we have been fighting, protecting workers against, and we will continue to do that.
Yeah. Let's get down to the logistics here as far as the polling stations, the hours, who is eligible to vote. Will time be granted, as far as time off granted for it? Get down to those specifics, because I know many people are ready to get out there. They're ready to back Team Sacrosanct, but there are still some questions to get down as far as the logistics to play out on that day.
Yeah. So polling stations open at 7 a.m. It's 7 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. There are the that was published today, I believe it was 76 polling stations in total, and the list was published today where persons are assigned to their polling station. So we ask persons to check the list to verify, one, that your name is on the list, and two, where you are assigned to vote. The polling stations, you have both fixed and roving polling stations, and as I mentioned, all polling stations open at 7 a.m. To vote on the day, you need a valid form of ID. Valid meaning not expired. You cannot use your work ID, so you must use either your national ID, driver's permit, or passport at the polling station. Right. Yes?
Now, when it comes to wage settlement, you made it quite clear, come at nothing less than 10%?
Nothing less than 10%. We will not accept 4%, and we will not accept nothing less than 10% on behalf of our membership. That is what they deserve. They have worked hard, and they must be compensated accordingly.
And it's only right people who are hardworking individuals need to secure a home, something, of course, that can be generational to the next generation, what have you. How do you intend to work to ensure that they get something with HDC that they can call their own?
Well, we are looking at, and we have engaged in talks that have been very fruitful. And part of those talks would have looked at the preferential access to HDC homes on behalf of workers, but access to HDC homes also requires persons to have a salary that allows them to be able to afford a home. And I want to put context to the 4% and how disrespectful it is, because when we say 4%, and why we have rejected the 4%, the average public officer salary is about $5,000. At 4% increase, and when I say 4%, that is 2% for 3 years and 2% for another 3 years. So 6 years of work, 4% offer translates to an increase in salary of $202. And for that same period, Mikee, inflation, and I'll just touch on food inflation. Food inflation was 38.8%. 38.8% inflation, and you offer workers a 4% increase in salary. That does not even scratch the surface of what is required for public officers to live in this country.
Now, of course, in every election, there's always that issue of mudslinging and things that are being said. There are things out there that saying basically that, that it's going to be a sellout, it's going to be a big political compromise. Address some of these issues as far as what's being said and what's being thrown at you at this time.
Absolute rubbish. I will state clearly, my opponents have nothing to offer. They have nothing to offer, so all they can talk about in their campaign is me. Let me touch on what we have been doing on behalf of workers. Right. We have been fighting, and of course it is public knowledge, the rejection of the 4%, the rejection of the non-consolidation of COLA. Of course, we have been fighting for the 9% that was negotiated by myself, negotiated and signed on behalf of NIB workers. We are fighting so that NIB workers get what was agreed on their behalf. We have been fighting to protect BIR and customs workers from being retrenched with this whole TTRA issue. Again, we have been defending WASA workers. We are defending HDC workers. So when we look at what this executive has been doing, what Team Sacrosanct has as its track record is defending workers. And that we will continue to do.
Safe working environment, that seems to be a top issue because many of these buildings are in a deplorable state. It's really bad. You hear reports of some workers having to bring their own toilet tissue and all of these things. Tell us about that, especially when it comes to securing or making sure that these working conditions are a lot better for the workers.
Well, of course, health and safety has been a challenge. It has not been a priority of the employer, and we have been forced in many instances to either shut down workplaces or have arrangements put in place to take care of workers who have informed us about their poor working conditions. So it has not been a priority by the employer, but of course the union, we have prioritized our membership, and where our membership has reached out to us and informed us of those issues, we have treated with it. We have ensured that provisions are made either to treat with the issue or to find new working arrangements or new spaces for workers to function from. So we have been dealing with that head on.
All right, we've got about maybe less than 2 weeks to go. We're in the heights of Carnival. We want people to understand the message. We want them to understand how important this is when it comes to the PSA elections on Monday, March 10th. I want you to take some time now, bring it home, talk to the members, let them know. I mean, while they're in the midst of revelry, while they're jumping up, while they're having a good time, their future has to be secured, better working conditions, nothing less than 10%, and of course, helping them to secure the things that they need to secure to show that, listen, hey, I am working and I am benefiting. Go right ahead.
All right. Thank you, Mikey. This PSA election is critical. It is important. We are in a period where workers are under attack, severe attack. And we have to understand that we need, as the PSA, the right leadership at the helm of the PSA, and that is myself and my team sacrosanct. I want to remind workers that workers have the right to a job, not just a job, but a permanent job. And more than just a permanent job, a good paying job. A vote for Team Sacrosanct is a vote for a living wage. And beyond that, securing that living wage is not just a pension, but a good pension. Workers have the right to healthy work environment, and a vote for Team Sacrosanct is a vote for a healthy work environment. Of course, we are, as Team Sacrosanct, we will ensure that we protect workers' sacred right to equity within the workplace, their right to representation, and of course, protect the right to your property. And when we talk about your property, we talk about things like your acting, traveling, uniform allowance, and all those things. March 10th, a vote for Team Sacrosanct is a vote for securing an inheritance, not just for yourself, and we have said it, for your children and your children's children. So come March 10th, vote Felisha Thomas and Team Sacrosanct.
Thank you so much, comrade. Of course, we're going to have you back next week because we want to make sure that people understand, and also we'll be telling them about the polling stations. Again, the polling stations open at 7 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. You are, of course, granted 2 hours off, I believe, to go vote.
2 hours off, time off.
Right.
For voting, yes.
And there are over 70 polling stations. So
yes, correct.
That's important. Thank you so much, comrade. Any closing comments?
Closing comments to the membership. Vote for the right representation, vote for strong representation, vote for Team Sacrosanct.
Thank you so much. Keep up the good work. We'll be speaking to you again next week. Do have a safe carnival and continue with your campaign.
The same to you, Mikey. Thank you.
Thank you. So there you have it, folks. She is leading Team Sacrosanct. We're talking PSA first vice president and a presidential candidate for the PSA, Felisha Thomas.